But first, our top story, and the story that we are breaking at this moment, the story that really should bring shame to each and every Indian watching this program. Less than 2 days after 14 brave jawans of the CRPF made the supreme sacrifice in Chhattisgarh, Sukma, they've been accorded with the ultimate insult. The martyred CRPF troopers' uniform, shoes and other belongings have been found dumped in a pile of garbage outside the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar Medical College mortuary. The flashes are going to be coming on your screen in a moment. It has been reported that hospital authorities dumped the martyrs' belongings in trash after their post-mortems. The blood-stained uniforms and boots were spotted by locals fished out of the hospital's waste heap. That's right. These are the images that should bring shock. If martyrs' uniforms are being dumped in a mortuary there in Chhattisgarh. Remember, 14 CRPF's personnel were killed in the Sukma attack on Monday. Little respect has been shown to them. These are the images that should bring... Let's just listen in first to some voices there.
नहीं, जो भी पोस्टमार्टम जिसका हो जाता है उसके विश्राज या पार्ट जो प्रिजर्व किए जाते हैं, जांच के लिए भेजे जाते हैं, वो ओपनली नहीं रखे जाते, वो हमेशा फॉर्मलिन में प्रिजर्व करके अलमारी में बंद किए जाते हैं। ये जो हुआ है, जो भी ये जो मैंने वीडियो देखा है, ये बड़ा अनफॉर्चुनेट था। ये शहादत का अपमान है। जो वीर सैनिक 2 दिन पहले इस ड्रेस को पहनकर, इस वर्दी को पहनकर हमारी सांसों को जिंदा रखने के लिए वहां पर मुठभेड़ कर वहां लड़ाई लड़ रहा था, आज उसके वस्त्र को कचरे के ढेर में, उसके जूते को कचरे के ढेर में यहाँ पर फेंक दिया। स्वास्थ्य मंत्री, इस प्रदेश के मुखिया, उनको माफी मांगना चाहिए शहीदों के परिवारजनों से और तमाम वो लोगों से जो बॉर्डर पर और इन गतिविधियों में जो लड़ाई लड़ने का काम करते हैं, उनसे माफी मांगने का काम करना चाहिए।
Okay, let me go straight to our correspondent Jugal Purohit, who's been on ground zero there in Bastar tracking this story. Jugal, appreciate your joining us. Want to get a sense. This seems to be becoming a political battle. Congress versus BJP. Forget the politics for the moment. Tell us, what is the situation? Is it true that martyrs' uniforms were dumped in the garbage outside the mortuary? Is that true or not? Let's just stick to the facts. Let's forget the politics.
Absolutely, Rajdeep. In fact, this incident is true and it is unfortunate. And, if I could recall, exactly 2 to 3 years back in this very state of Chhattisgarh, in Bastar, where this incident took place, I recall reporting on an incident where martyrs' bodies were brought in a garbage pickup van. So, it isn't for the first time that it has happened in India's most troubled state from the Naxal point of view. And sadly, it has happened again. Our Raipur reporter has shot these visuals himself and has then gone about questioning the authorities, who obviously have nothing else but to admit to this absolutely shameful scenario.
I'm getting what you're saying there, Jugal. You've been tracking the entire episode and you've looked at several attacks. Is this something that happens? Is this the first time that you've heard of something like this happening?
Absolutely, Rajdeep. In fact, if one is to just take a short look at what the procedure is, if there is an attack where, you have deceased personnel in their uniform, the postmortem takes place, either the uniform is provided to the police for investigation for forensic purposes, or if that is not required, then it is handed over to the force personnel from where these personnel belong. In this case, the CRPF, which would have then disposed these uniforms, as I am given to understand, in a respectful manner. But in this case, obviously, none of these two norms, established norms, were followed, and the doctors and the state administration, it's a government-run hospital, not a private hospital. Right. They chose to completely ignore for their convenience and just dump it out, which was caught by our reporters, Rajdeep.
I want to go to Prakash Singh, former DG of BSF, one of the senior most police officers in the country. Mr. Prakash Singh, what do you have to say? Martyrs' shoes, uniforms being thrown in a garbage pile. Do you believe that this is an insult to their memory? Is this something which you believe could be allowed?
No, this is totally unacceptable. This is an insult not only to their memory, it's an insult to the force, it's an insult to their brave performance. It shows utter callousness on the part of the medical staff it also shows callousness on the part of the unit. Actually, there should have been coordination between the medical staff and the unit whose personnel they were. And the uniform and other items, if they were not required by the police for investigation purposes, then they should be handed over to the CRP unit concerned, and it's for them to preserve it. Or if they were not required by anyone, maybe the family wanted it, they would like to preserve it, but the remnants should have been preserved and given due honor and respect, and not just thrown in the dustbin like that.
Well, Mr. Prakash Singh, you're absolutely right. Those images really shock us. And is it any surprise then that there seems to be no respect for our martyrs killed in the battle with the Naxals? Now their uniforms, their shoes being disposed of in garbage piles. Appreciate your joining us there, Jugal Purohit from Raipur. Let's turn then to another of our top focus tonight. In the last 5 months, there's been a shocking rise in reported cases of sexual assault against children in Bengaluru schools. The latest, a school attendant arrested for raping a 3-year-old student inside the school compound. Despite strict guidelines, it's clear the shame continues. Parents are worried, children seem vulnerable. Pratibha Raman reports from the shame of IT City.
On the morning of 26 November, a woman dropped her 3-year-old daughter off a reputed private school in East Bengaluru. When a child got home that day, she wasn't her usual self. After repeated coaxing, the 3-year-old finally said that a school attendant had done bad things with her. Panicking, the child was taken for a medical examination which confirmed rape. It's a script that has played out with sickening regularity. The child was raped not once but twice on school premises.
Based on the report of the mother and the child, a case has been taken up under POCSO Act as well as under Section 376 of the Indian Penal Code, and one person by name Nagaraj, who was an attendant in the school, has been arrested. He is the accused in the case. He has been arrested, interrogated, and he has been sent to the judicial custody.
Bengaluru has been shamed again. Another child allegedly raped in school. In July, a 6-year-old girl was allegedly raped in an upscale school, triggering fierce protests by parents. A gym instructor was arrested. In October, another 3-year-old was allegedly assaulted by an office assistant in school premises after the child identified him during the investigation. What's wrong with Bengaluru schools? Aren't children safe anymore? What happened to the guidelines that were issued by the Bengaluru police, which included installation of GPS in buses, CCTV cameras in school buildings, and mandatory verification of school staff?
While on one hand, we see a paedophile who has jumped bail and fled the country right under the purview of the Bangalore police, on the other, this city witnesses an epidemic with regards to the child abuse cases inside school premises, raising a lot of concern among Bangaloreans who fear when it comes to sending their children to the schools. With camera person Madhu, Pratibha Raman, Bangalore, Headlines Today.
Okay, let's just look at these 5 incidents. At least 5 incidents of sexual assault against children in school just have come to light in the last few months. November 30th, 2014, a school attendant arrested for raping a 3-year-old in her school. Then on October 29th, just a couple of days earlier, a teacher was arrested for raping a 6-year-old girl in a school in Bengaluru. October 21st, a 4-year-old girl allegedly raped by a teacher at her school. August 5th, 2014, 8-year-old girl sexually assaulted again by the teacher. July 2nd, 2014, another 6-year-old allegedly raped by 2 school staffers. So there is a pattern, which is why we are raising the big question. And the question we are raising, should the schools be blamed? Should schools now be held accountable when you send your children to them? That's the question I want to raise at the top of the news today at 9. Forget the politics for a moment. We want to focus on our children. Joining me now, Lata Vaidyanathan, former principal of Modern School, one of the country's leading educationists. Joining me, Gopal Hosu, former ADGP of Security in Karnataka, Premila Nesargi, women and child rights activist who's been taking up this case, and Inderjeet Singh Gambhir is the National General Secretary, All India Parents Association. Appreciate all of you joining us, but I want to come to you, Ms. Nesargi, first. Do you believe that schools are the ones who should be held responsible? Is your campaign against the schools, or is it against the political leadership? Is it against the police? Who should be held responsible that despite strict guidelines now being put in place, there's been another incident of sexual assault inside a school?
First thing I want to tell you, is there any law and order in our state? That is the question that is haunting me every now and then.
No, let's not make this political.
Law and order,
No, Ms. Nesargi, are you going to blame, are you going to say that these rapes are evidence of a breakdown in law and order across Bangalore and across Karnataka? Is this about the political class or is it about the schools?
It is irrespective of the political class. It is the establishment. It should be the rule of law. I do not know what has happened to our police department. No, I don't think they are implementing the law strictly. If only it was implemented, I don't think the schools would have allowed such things to happen. Not one school, 2 schools, 3 schools, cook assaulting a child, teacher assaulting, school teacher and the peon assaulting. Look at the irony, 28 students in a hostel. They have left the hostel and gone away. They could not tolerate the assault. This is what is going on in our state.
No, who are you going to, who do you hold responsible?
No,
I want to know education department, the schools or the police. I just want to know very clearly from you, who should be answering the questions today?
In particular.
Education
why
department.
I am telling you, 5,000 schools are there, they are not being monitored, they are not taken care of, money is playing a big role, licenses are given indiscriminately, permitting them to have it.
Okay.
This is what is happening. None of them want to take care of it. When they come for renewal of license, nobody is bothered. Whether the background of the students or the peons are looked into, due diligence is done, it is not looked into.
Okay.
This is the reason why all these things are happening.
Can I just take that to the police in a moment? The education department, the minister we wanted from Karnataka has not come on the program, but I want to go to you, Mr. Gopal Osur. You've been with the Karnataka police. The police on 26th of July had issued tough safety guidelines for schools to follow. Guidelines that should be followed really across schools in this country. School buses were to be fixed with GPS and CCTV cameras. Drivers were to be isolated. This was done to provide safety measures and environment in which such incidents could be warded off. At that time, the fear was that school drivers could be involved in such incidents. But now all of this is happening inside the school premises. Who is to be blamed if something like this happens inside the school premises? I send my child to school in the belief that my child will be safe and secure. Should the school be held responsible, education department or the police authorities? Yes, Mr. Osur.
Yeah. Rajdeep.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the police become the punching bags in most of these incidents. If you look at each one of these cases, the 5 cases that you reported, you mentioned, in each one of these cases, they are isolated incidents committed by perverted minds, no doubt very ghastly, and the civil society needs to be really worried about such incidents. But putting the blame on the police for all these cases would be wrong.
So you say, so for you these are isolated instances involving perverted minds. Don't blame the police is what you're saying.
Yes.
The police cannot police every school in Bangalore.
What I'm saying is the police have been implementing the POCSO Act with all its sincerity. In the recent case, the moment it was brought to the notice of the police swung into action. They ensured that the culprit was arrested, he was subjected to the due process of law, and the criminal justice system has been set in motion.
Okay.
So, blaming everything, putting all the blame on the police would be wrong. And I won't say that it's a breakdown of law and order machinery.
Okay. You're saying don't put all the blame. You're saying don't put all the blame on the police. Lata Vaidyanathan. Okay, if we don't blame the police, if we don't blame the education department, who am I to blame? Because the fact is, protection of children from sexual offences, POSCO, is a strong act, but it appears that the law is not enough. How do I protect my children? Is it, as is being suggested by Premila Nesargi, the fact that schools are allowed to mushroom, no attempt is made to monitor whether those schools are following safety guidelines?
So, Rajdeep, it's with frightening regularity that we are hearing of these cases.
That's right.
It's really sad. So, let's look at all the three departments. Firstly, let's take responsibility and start with the school itself. I think schools must be safe zones for children entrusted to them in such huge trust. The best position of people's lives are in your hands. The schools will have to take care, and somewhere we are all getting this feeling that at least until class 8, there should be, one way would be to have female staff. But at the same time, it's not a gender issue. I think the responsibility of making sure that the children are safe within school, schools will have to take this on themselves. The schools cannot absolve themselves of this responsibility, is saying that these are instances in isolation.
So you accept the school as primary?
The staff has to be in place all the time.
Ma'am, do you accept that the school has primary responsibility and therefore the license? Because I'm going to play out all the 5 instances. In each of these cases, questions have been raised over the school management. In some cases, the management has not even been there, has been found to be absentee management in Bangalore. Do you believe that the school management is the principal, must take principal responsibility? And the license must be immediately cancelled of any such school?
I would think, no, that would be in haste, because one has to identify the reason for doing what they are doing. I do admit that the schools have to take responsibility, and I cannot imagine a situation where a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old young child is left without supervision for such horrendous acts to happen. How do these loopholes happen? And one has to see that these are all plugged on time to make sure that the systems by themselves actually should take care of all these things. And if such a thing is found repeatedly happening, then I think there should be more stringent laws. And once the legal system has taken care of such reported cases being assessed properly and punished accordingly, they should be so severe that people should be afraid of touching a child for whatever it's worth.
Okay.
We are not going to be talking about how the child has to be looked after, how counseling has to happen, and also the Directorate of Education has to be also taking some responsibility, because if people are accusing schools of coming up with the licenses, with fake licenses, with not systems in place, I think there is some kind of supervision monitoring that is absolutely critical for these.
So effectively,
but more than anything else,
yes,
I think schools have to be safe zones. And schools have to take responsibility for what's happening in schools within that time. Not
made that
necessarily blaming, taking the blame all the time.
Right. I take your point. You've said that schools have to take responsibility for being safe zones. Is that what you're also going to say, Inderjeet Singh Gambhir, as the National General Secretary of All India Parents Association? Are parents also going to say, principally the school is to blame? The school has to take responsibility, the school management and possibly the Directorate of Education?
Primarily, it is the responsibility of the school to ensure that all the children, they are safe in their school boundaries and within the transport area also. But it's not the only responsibility of the school, it's all these departments.
How are they responsible, according to Mr. Hosur, the police officer, if there is a perverted mind, if there is a school attendant with a perverted mind who goes and rapes a young girl, is the school going to be held responsible? Is the Directorate of Education going to be held responsible?
If the teachers are known as perverted mind, then why we are...
No, I agree. If the teacher is involved, clearly the school has to take it. But what if it's a school attendant? What if there is someone inside the school? Should the school still take the responsibility?
School has to take the responsibility, because they should have a checks and balance in the recruitment system. First they should psychologically check the person and see whether the person is of a sound temperament.
Let me though take that to Premila Nesargi, because Ms. Nesargi, the fact is, as I said, that after the first few incidents, there were measures which the Bangalore police claimed they had put in place. Parents have formed a Bangalore Schools Parents Association to put pressure on school authorities to have their voices heard. And yet the instances continue. So somewhere the problem is not being resolved.
No, that is because if the head is properly installed, everything would be all right. Look at the irony in Karnataka. The Home Department is not guided by the Home Minister. He is guided by another officer, a retired officer, who has to instruct him how to handle the situation.
Are we saying the Home Minister is responsible for what happened in a school?
Happening.
Are we saying that the Home Minister of Karnataka is responsible for any rape that takes place in Karnataka?
It is not. See, if the Home Minister is good, if he is able to administer, everything will be in order. Here we have a Home Minister who does not know how to administer the Home Department, and the police are not obeying him. They are obeying one Mr. Kempaiah, who is the advisor to Home Minister. That is the reason all these things are happening.
Don't make the police a punching bag. He's saying focus on the schools, focus on school education.
We don't make the police. We don't make the police, but the ex-police officer we blame. That is happening. Mr. Gopal Hosur by himself is a good official. Mr. Mohinty is a good official. Wherever the head of the police are good, there is law and order. But here is the situation in Bangalore at present. There is no law and order, no asker, no teller, either in the education department or in the home department, and that's the reason all these haphazard things are going on. Nobody is bothered about it.
Can I just take to that
Nobody
you, Mr.
is bothered about it.
Mr. Hosur, should
Nobody
there
is
not be
accountable.
Okay, you're saying nobody's accountable. Mr. Hosur, that's what it's coming down to. Zero tolerance and no there should be zero tolerance. Unfortunately, there is no accountability. That's the fear which is being expressed. Many of these schools will restart. Even if they are found to be guilty, found to be culpable, they'll restart because the stakes are very high. It's a supply-demand situation. You can't just close down a school. So the police also seems to be caught in a bind.
I think you're right, Rajdeep, that the police are caught in a bind. There are so many stakeholders to this issue, and each one of the stakeholders has to play his role. The police play the role of implementing the law and administering the criminal justice system as its principal stakeholder. I think the Bangalore City Police have been doing admirably well. And
but there seems to be no fear. But there seems to be no fear. No fear of the law.
Rajdeep.
Yes.
In fact, the limitation of the law is understood today by all the criminals. Unlike in the past, when I used to be in the city police a long time back, there used to be a fear of law because the limitation of law was not understood by many of these criminals. Today, the criminal understands the limitation of the law, and then he goes to the court, he gets a bail.
So you admit there is no fear of the law. You admit that for someone who resorts to a case of sexual assault of a young child in a school, he believes he doesn't have to fear the law.
No, I am not mentioning that. What I am mentioning is if it is an organized crime, if it is done by an organized gang, if it is a mafia which is operating, the mafia needs to have fear, and it is the police responsibility to instill fear in such mafia. But where isolated incidents of perverted minds take place, like the ones that have been reported from schools, police cannot be held responsible. They can be held responsible if they don't investigate the cases properly, if they compromise on the investigation, if they compromise on the charge sheet and the evidences.
Yes, Praminanda Selvi. Yes.
I'll tell you, isolated incidents can happen in one school or another school, 2 schools, 3 schools. Every day in and out, we are hearing this rape story. What is this, Mr. Gopal? Gopal, sir, please, I appreciate your work. You have been doing a wonderful work. Why don't you post good officials in Bangalore? Why don't you ask your police commissioner, post good officials? They have all come on the influence, on the basis of the religion, caste. That's the reason why all these things are happening. Why don't you ask them?
Okay.
There must be autonomy.
Ma'am, I take your point, and I'm going to give a final word to you, Lata Vaidyanathan, and a quick final word at that. Do you believe that every school should have, does it have training and orientation for male staff to ensure the safety of children on campus? Is it important to sensitize male staff, or is it, as some are now suggesting, that girls' school must only have girls' staff? Or women's staff, sorry.
Rajdeep, I think, so some remedial measures we can be talking about. Yes. One is that, yes, I think early childhood and early primary education must be under the care essentially of more women than men. 2, since we don't want to make a great gender difference, I think all teachers, it's not just male and just female, but I think all of them must have these sensitization exercises periodically. 3, it's not just teachers, but the entire staff, because we are not talking, attendants and school bus conductors, ayahs, all these are parts of these children's lives, and therefore they must also be trained accordingly. I think besides all these preventive measures, it is very, very important that someone who is finally found to be the culprit must be punished so severely and should not have any place in the school system. The legal processes or the processes of the laws and investigations should be short, quick, and fearful in the minds of people.
Okay, so
and I think the Directorate of Education needs to take stock of the situation that these are not allowed to mushroom the way they do.
Okay, exemplary punishment
this is
not
a political game. This is
not a political game. This is about we are dealing with the future of our children. This is not a political game. We are dealing with the future of our children. We need exemplary punishment, whether it is in Bangalore or any part of the country. I appreciate all my guests joining us on my main talking point tonight here on the News Today at 9.